Whenever I see Disney crossing the boundary from a cute, innocent, magical world to an intense, fast-paced, anxious spectacle, I think of Wolfgang Reitherman.
I'm basically action-oriented, and like to get to the extreme of things. I kind of like danger. It's a thrill, and I think it's something everyone should experience once in a while to wake themselves up.
The history of animation is riddled with comic references to action, from absurd, exaggerated motion to outright slapstick. From its rise to popularity during the era of silent film, the cartoon became synonymous with comedy. This is Phantos Missouri by French director Émile Cohl. Made in 1908, it's considered to be the first hand-drawn animated cartoon, and from its bizarre crudeness, a comical precedent is pretty clear. 24 years later, Disney Studios produced Flowers and Trees, the first animation to use a Technicolor method. As groundbreaking and Academy Award-winning as it was, there remained an underlying comic tone to the work. But Walt's exploration of the style was far from over. In early 1934, development on Disney's first animated feature began. The same year, Wolfgang Wully Reitherman joined Disney as a resident animator. It wasn't until their second feature, Pinocchio, that the young animator had a chance at some real action when he was given the task of animating Monstro. The sheer size of the whale is frightening enough. Its vastness is visible, it's tangible in the world projected. For the majority of its time on screen, Monstro struggles even to fit in the frame. But more importantly, Reitherman generated such detailed tension in the movement that the scene was as distant from comedy as if it were reality. Granted, the music score did the mood a favour, but take the music out and put it next to Steamboat Willie 12 years earlier, and you see just how a new technique can transform the scene. Wully seemed to have a knack for action, and in 1941, after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the US Air Force, confronting a very real kind of action, and earning a distinguished Flying Cross in the process. On his return to Disney, Wully was quickly known as the studio's action man. What made his style unique? How did he redefine the action scene? Well, it can be summed up into two methods. The first is the weight of tension. Reitherman grew up with an interest in aircrafts, initially intending to be an aeronautic engineer, before moving to animation. Along with his experience and fascination with fighter jets, Reitherman had an instinct for understanding space in action, as if shot on a live film set. The tension in each motion, the desperation of each character as the background flies past our eyes. The scenes are constantly uncertain, right to the last frame. As the scene takes off, the pressure builds, the stakes are high, and we can see the outcome in full. The weight of tension, measured by pace and risk. The second method is the combination of the real and the cartoon. This can come in many forms. For example, Fantasia's Rite of Spring segment features a battle sequence between a Tyrannosaurus and a very outmatched Stegosaurus. We see the fight from a realistic visual perspective. We know these dinosaurs were huge, and the shots place us there, watching from below. But despite angles and movements, the sequence places an emotional identity on each dinosaur. It's in the eyes, the angry red next to the desperate yellow. Perhaps the most apt example of the two methods is the chase of Ichabod Crane by the Headless Horseman in The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Ichabod is a caricature of a man. With his skeletal figure and exaggerated features, he represents the traditional cartoon world. His movement and behaviour is comical and over the top. There's something inherently funny about watching him stumble around in fear. There's also an underlying tension building within the scene. Ichabod's descent into madness, the ominous darkness of the background. The contributing spooks are cartoons of all of our own anxieties. The pace builds the tension with brief pauses to breathe and assess the scene before shocking us back into the danger. Then the horseman appears. But unlike Ichabod, and despite the lack of a head, his figure and behaviour seem comparably lifelike. Even the two horses in the scene are drastically different in style. As the chase ensues, the dark surroundings fly by, the obstacles grow more frequent, and death is always a frame away. The effect is a hasty, dreamlike sequence, one that leaves the viewer so convinced, so immersed in the new reality, Reitherman's reality, designed not to find tension in the absurd and the abstract, but in the real and conceivable nature of the familiar. Maybe without his experience in the Air Force, Reitherman would have followed the examples other animators set for him. Maybe it was an innate facet of his creative mind that led him to the action. Or maybe it was just a matter of time before cartoons edged closer to reality. Whatever the case, in a time when Disney fought to be taken seriously in the art world, Wolfgang Reitherman took cartoon action from a silly show to a powerful experience, inviting the viewer into a new realm where they can see their reality, their fears, and their thrills animated.
I tried to get everybody to think that the prince was going to get killed. We didn't, theoretically, we didn't know. In other words, you were driving to kill that prince all the way through. But that's what I mean is that it progresses and builds and builds and builds in excitement until man, if you haven't got anywhere else to go, then stop it. Stop it right there and do the killing.